Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for Nurturing Multicultural Voices, a toolkit for educators. We hope that this session provides you with resources and ideas to use art and storytelling to support multilingual learners. And speaking of toolkits, we also will provide a link to Smithsonian's Learning Lab collections, where you can find many of the outlines and lesson plans we've used over the years. Our hope is that this session and the additional information in the Learning Lab collections will inspire you to adapt them to fit the needs of your learners. Before we introduce ourselves, I want to note that we will be answering questions at the end of the presentation, but please feel free to submit your questions and comments at any time. Our colleague Nicole Vance will be monitoring the chat for us today. I'll start the introductions. I am Beth Evans, and I work in the Education Department at the National Portrait Gallery. One of my main goals in every workshop, tour, festival, or other program that I plan is to show how important portraiture is. Portraits are everywhere. They tell our stories, and what better way to learn and teach than through a good story? When I started this role 9 years ago, one of the first programs that I worked on was a week-long portraiture workshop with my now good friends, Micheline Lavalle and Philippa Rappaport.
Mish.
Hi, I am Micheline Lavalle, and I work as a family literacy specialist in the Office for Resource Services, Fairfax County Public Schools. For the past 25 years, I have worked in the field of multilingual family engagement, work that I connect to in a very personal way, having immigrated to this country from Chile as a child. I have witnessed time and time again throughout the years the transformational power of the arts. The arts have the ability to connect us through our shared humanity. Our 10-year partnership with our friends at the Smithsonian have been instrumental in expanding access to the arts and museum experience to our immigrant families. I am honored and overjoyed to share this work with all of you today.
Hi, I'm Philippa Rappaport. I work at the Smithsonian Office of Educational Technology. That's a central education office at the Smithsonian that aims to help teachers nationally access all of the amazing digital content from across the Smithsonian's 21 museums, also research centers, libraries, and the National Zoo. I've taught English to multilingual learners, and I've also taught other languages, and I've been at the Smithsonian since 2001. This work with Beth and Micheline is one of my favorite projects that I get to do, and we're all just really pleased to share this work with you today.
We want to introduce you to our workshops through some of the words and pictures of the participants themselves. And during this presentation, we will share, with permission, many of the photos taken over the years of workshops with English language learners and their families. So here's some quotes here that hopefully you can see. Oops. We'll go to the next slide, please. There we go. Oh, let's go back one slide. I saw myself reflected in the works of art and plan to visit the museum again. Next slide. I feel that it is important that my children know my story of when I was a child so that they can learn to value it and also value their own lives.
Next slide, please. Yeah, so here you see numbers and dates about the history of the program. We started in 2013 as an analog project with handmade books to support teachers and students to share and document important family stories and memories. We connected with units across the Smithsonian to showcase stories from these local classroom projects, and we found that it resonated particularly with immigrant families, recently arrived, learning English at varying paces, and figuring out their new lives. From there, the project grew. We've been working together for a decade, at least one program per year, often more, and we've refined this every year since with a focus on immigrant families. Today, We'll be talking in detail about the various components that we have found to be crucial to successful programming with multilingual learner families and adults. You see that number at the bottom of the screen, 212? We'll explain today how this program impacts not just the 212 participants, but their families as well, often 3 generations for each participant. Next slide, please.
Oh, Micheline, you're muted.
So sorry about that. Thanks, Philippa. As you can see by the numbers on the slide, ESOL or multilingual students are considerable in numbers in the US. In Virginia alone, we have over 117,000 students. It is important to note that although Fairfax County is the 5th wealthiest county in the United States, there are pockets of poverty in the county. Many of our multilingual students live in these areas. In Fairfax County, we have approximately 39,000 multilingual students, and close to 27,000 of those students qualify for free or reduced lunch. Among these students, there are higher rates of chronic absenteeism, dropout rates, and lower on-time graduation. Although there are many factors that can impact student success, lack of family engagement and support is among the most impactful. For multilingual families, supporting and engaging in their children's education can be a very challenging prospect in the United States. Many multilingual immigrants do not understand the expectations of the US school system, but not only how they can provide support and guidance to their children, but also in understanding academic expectations. For example, the importance of regular attendance, etc. Another important factor that many families are not aware of is how critical it is for their children to come to school with a very strong cultural identity. Next slide, please. In this last area, the Family Literacy Program, through our arts-based workshops, partnerships with the Smithsonian, has been very critical in helping families make those connections with one another so that they can celebrate their talents and cultural heritage. It is in these spaces that families build community and find places of belonging. A common thread that weaves through our arts-based workshops is that of storytelling and personal histories. When families are able to share their story and hear one another's story, something magical happens, that they find that they're not alone in their experiences, and they start to begin to feel valued. Storytelling is a very powerful way to create community. There is a growing body of research about the power of arts integration to engage, empower, and connect multilingual learners and immigrant populations into their communities. We know this to be very, very true. Art is a strong conduit for the amplification of voice and the strengthening of identity. Next slide, please. So I'll share a little bit about what we do in the Family Literacy Program. Family literacy seeks to elevate and affirm each family's culture, language, and traditions, and to encourage a strong sense of identity and belonging among participants. We provide families with the tools that they need to promote their children's success, and we do this by building their capacity in various areas, such as English language acquisition, advocacy skills, tech skills, and visual literacy. Our arts-based approach in partnership with the Smithsonian has further advanced this work by enhancing opportunities for families to create, learn about art, and visit museums. Now we'll pass the next section to Beth, who will lead you in a sample workshop activity.
Thank you, Micheline. Let's have the next slide, please. This is now going to involve a little more interaction with you, all of our session participants. Along with telling you about our arts-based workshops, we want to give you a taste of what it's like to participate. Every workshop begins with an introductory session, as we talked about, where we introduce the artwork, and or as we will talk about, and we want to encourage close looking and build visual literacy skills through these sessions. And here we have 4 portraits from the Portrait Gallery's Outwin 22 portrait competition. So I want to give you some time to look at these 4 portraits. These are portraits that were on view at the museum that we looked at with our participants, both in a virtual session and then actually in person. And these are some questions that we asked participants as we were first looking at these works of art. First, what is happening with this group or person? Have you ever experienced something similar? And when was that? Now, I would encourage all of you to select one of these 4 portraits and then to respond to a question that we have here. And while you are all thinking and taking time to respond, if you feel like it, I'm going to give Micheline and Philippa a chance to respond as well. Philippa, let's start with you. Which portrait did you identify with, and which question did you want to answer here?
I really, well, I'm answering the second question, and I really resonate with that first one, refugees crossing the border wall into South Texas. I grew up with stories of my grandparents fleeing persecution in Eastern Europe, and I see in this image sort of all that fear and also maybe some hope in the background with the sun in the background. And I don't know, the story of leaving with nothing and leaving everything behind and just that little baby. So that's what I see there.
I love that. It sounds like you are connecting with it on a personal and even emotional level. Even though it's not something that you yourself have experienced, it is bringing you back to the family histories that you grew up with and making the connections between this family and the lived experiences of your own family members. Thank you. Micheline, what about you?
I connect with the people of the sun. And this portrait reminds me of the families that we serve every day, and how proud these families are, especially when they have someone, a parent or a grandparent, come visit them from their countries. The man and woman in this portrait seem to be saying, "I'm here, I am proud, I'm here to stay." They are so proud of themselves. And we see that every day with the families that are here, even though they face so many challenges. They're really happy to be here and very proud to be raising their children here. So I connected that not on a personal, but just in my work and who we are working with every day.
Mm-hmm. But I would say that is a personal connection. It's a connection to people that you know and that you care about. And it sort of gives you that like an emotional response to seeing these people here. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who's responded. I'll just read out some of these. So quite a few people have responded to the top left portrait. Someone said it looks like they are fleeing danger with fear and solidarity. So these are really like strong words that we're using: fleeing and danger and fear and solidarity. Also on the top left, it looks like the family is going to another level to hide or escape. You can see in the facial expressions this sense of impending danger, perhaps that they're hiding or escaping. Someone responded to the customer service representative, the top right portrait, and they said, the person who's at the desk looks pretty disengaged and like they don't want to be there. I've experienced this before multiple times with people who don't seem interested in being at their jobs. I mean, certainly I have experienced this as well. And when we took our participants here, many of whom are at jobs that they don't particularly love, but that they're working at to just provide for their families. And we spent a lot of time in front of customer service representative, just talking about the moments of identifying or connecting with this. And then on the bottom left, a really sweet connection. Someone said a grandmother is spending time with her grandchildren. I resonate with that because my first picture, My first picture of the family in the window. I was the child alone in their window, but I could feel the family near me. The grandchild will be here next month. Congratulations. Someone said there's a strong desire to be part of a safe and thriving community. Why else would people take such risks? That's absolutely something that that a lot of people have identified with in the top left portrait, that there's a tremendous risk happening. And so it makes us wonder, like, what is the full story here? What happened before this that would cause them to flee? And then what is going to happen after this portrait? Like, what are the next moments, and are they going to be okay? Someone also said in the top right, I feel, I personally understand what this is like. I can see her focus and concentration, but also I've been in customer service since I was 16. Oh my goodness, a very personal connection here. The moment I could work, I began to work. And then there's an infinite amount of giving that goes into serving the community, so personal, in creating rapport between you and the community. You can also see the intensity in her Indigenous features. I often get that I look mean or that I have a front. I'm a nice person. I've just been through so much within and without my own community, and whether it's the Spanish-speaking community or everywhere else. The lack of appreciation in general society feels toward customer service, with the impact now of COVID-19 has both negatively and positively affected the manner in which people communicate with one another. I think that that's part of what this artist is trying to do here, is whether or not we've actually been in one of these sort of like menial, thankless jobs. This portrait, to see it in person, it's large and it's colorful and it's really beautiful. And it sort of forces us to put ourselves in the shoes of this person and recognize that she is a person, and that everyone in the customer service industry is a person as well. So thank you to everyone who's sharing these messages. There are so many more comments, and I would love to read them all. And definitely after this, I'm going to take some time to read them, but just for the sake of time, I'm going to continue on with our presentation. But I just want to clarify that it's a common misconception that if you don't immediately like all the art you see, that you're not quote unquote getting it. And that's just not real life. Art is like music. I often explain to people, you're not going to like every song you hear, and you won't like every artwork that you see. So what we do is give the participants time to look and explore and find out what sparks their curiosity or what they can relate to. And then they are sort of steering their own art appreciation ship to find out what they are drawn to and why. And this is one of the many activities that we use to engage multilingual learners with portraiture and encourage them to tap into their own stories, like many of you just did. Thank you. Philippa is now going to share how you can access our lesson plans and the tools we use, just like this very simple one, to create your own activities and your own lesson plans.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Beth. So that exercise was designed to give you a taste of the type of work we've been doing. It may seem simple, but that could be deceptive. Getting people to talk and share their ideas can really set the foundation for very powerful and moving work. And you could see that discussion was already happening in the chat, right? So as mentioned before, we've collected what we feel are our best ideas that we've learned from our 10 years of working together, and we've put them all into a program toolkit. You can find all of this content on the National Portrait Gallery's page in the Smithsonian Learning Lab, and you can see that address across the top there, learninglab.si.edu/org/NPG. The lab is a free online platform that anyone can use to find digitized resources from across the Smithsonian's museums and research centers. And you can also find there what we call collections. Those are curated learning activities. So when you go to the Portrait Gallery page, just scroll down to that red box on the left. It's labeled English Language Learners. And when you're there, you can click more to explore the 7 collections there. You can also put in hashtag family literacy, or else search under family literacy as 2 words in any search bar of the Learning Lab page, and you'll find even more collections that have to do with family literacy activities. Next slide, please. We've broken our programming down into several key components that we feel are crucial to the success of each program. For introductions, this is when we're really setting the tone for the time we'll spend together. We take some time to introduce the facilitators, participants, and workshop plans. And because this work is very much based on group interaction, we find that this opening is really important to help participants get comfortable, engaged, and hopefully psyched to put their best effort into the program. Each program includes close looking at art. For us, this involves a trip to the museum and a related art project. And this is where the participants start to make personal connections to what they're seeing and maybe, we hope, start to move from perhaps an analytical place to something that's more feeling centered and creative. Finally, the program concludes with a celebration in which the participants and sometimes the facilitators too share their artwork and enjoy a potluck meal with the participants' families. In some years, we add another museum component in which participants' work is showcased at the family day at the museum, or participants might act as volunteers leading the art activity at a family day. We normally do these programs over 4 separate meetings, but of course, if you do it, you'll tweak the process so that it suits your learners. Each aspect of the program is described and is accessible in those Learning Lab collections: the art used, questions discussed, materials needed, examples of participant work, so that you can pick and choose whatever you want to use. Next slide, please. So now we'd like to show you some of the programs that we've done. So the images here come from our first project. It was called Today I Am Here. And this was designed in 2013 to complement an exhibition that's now at the National Museum of American History called Many Voices, One Nation. We worked with schools across the DC metro area, from first graders to adults, special needs students, language classrooms, and more, to engage students in telling their own stories about how they came to their current home. And then we showcased these completed stories online and at the museum during family days. The idea is that we all have a story to tell, and together our stories contribute to the story of this one nation. And you can see how when the paper books are displayed, it looks like they're all holding hands. This book format is one in an entire series of handmade books, all from just one sheet of paper, designed by a local book artist, Sushmita Mazumdar, with the aim of helping families and students explore their own family stories and memories in a fun and creative way. Micheline tried the project out with some of the teachers in her program, and that's how we got to where we are today, all working together. As I mentioned, we found that this simple activity, expressing a personal truth and feeling heard and valued for it, had an incredibly profound resonance with multilingual learning families. Showcasing the stories online and in the galleries was also really important. We found that this part of the project gave a sense of validation to our participants. We were in effect confirming that their stories matter, and that their stories and everyone's stories, all of our stories, together are part of the national narrative of our nation. Next slide, please. So we continued to do this programming. Next slide, please. And in 2015, we worked off of an exhibition dedicated to the life of activist Dolores Huerta. And here, the project focused on photography and advocacy. Pairs of parents and teenage kids were asked to look at their communities and document what they love and what they want to change. And their final projects were put together as sets of photo essays displayed at the National Portrait Gallery. Micheline will talk a little bit more about feedback from that program in a little bit. Next slide, please. We also did a project called Illuminating the Self. This was one of my favorite ones. For this one, we hired an artist to help us. We took photographic portraits in black and white of each participant and then projected the image onto paper so that participants could trace the outlines of their bodies. From there, they used charcoal to color in their self-portraits using the black and white photograph for reference. We were playing with the idea of shading, using the idea of light and dark as a metaphor. We're all made up of light and dark. And you can see how beautifully this one turned out, but truly they were all as beautiful as the one you see here. Next slide, please.
All right, and now I'll share a few more of the workshops that we've done. Every 3 years, the Portrait Gallery features the Outwin Buchiva Portrait Competition. These exhibitions are so special because they feature contemporary artwork of often everyday people. The artwork is exciting and innovative, and for the purposes of this workshop, it's really ideal. With the Outwin 2019 exhibition, we toured the whole show and then invited participants to select one portrait that spoke to them. They then wrote monologues inspired by those portraits, sort of taking on the role of the person portrayed. They took time to help each other refine and eventually perform their monologues. These monologues were incredibly powerful and heartfelt as participants wove their own thoughts and experiences into the stories that they shared. This portrait, seen here, called 80 Days by artist Deborah Roberts, inspired a few participants with its portrayal of George Stinney, who at 14 became the youngest person to receive the death penalty in the United States. Next slide, please. So we're going to watch a brief clip from one participant's monologue, and we also have a little bit of some of the text from the monologue that she delivered. But you can find more monologues and additional portraits in the Learning Lab collections. Let's go ahead and play the clip.
La verdad no pude contener mis lágrimas, tuve que llorar, tuve que sacar lo que estaba dentro de mí. Le pedí a Dios, le pedí a todos que me saquen de este lugar. No podía soportar esas noches oscuras que he estado en este lugar encerrado. Sufrí mucho, lloré muchas noches, pensé que al día siguiente los oficiales van a venir y me van a decir, puedes salir, eres libre. Y este retrato significa mucho para mí porque yo quiero que en un futuro la gente, las personas sepan quién era yo, qué fue lo que me sucedió y tomen conciencia. Yo soy un niño de 14 años, no puedo defenderme igual que un adulto. No puedo hablar por mí. Algo más que quiero que sepan es que yo tuve muchos sueños. Desde muy pequeño soñaba ser piloto. Soñaba con viajar a otros países. Pero lamentablemente vivimos en un momento donde el color de la piel importa y mucho.
We were all blown away by the final projects that these participants delivered. And in fact, we were kind of scrambling to figure out how we could get them back into the exhibition to perform their monologues in front of the artwork that they had selected, but then the pandemic hit, so we didn't get to do that. But as I mentioned, they are available, many of them, on our Learning Lab. Next slide, please. In 2020, our workshop was fully virtual, but in 2021, we held our first hybrid workshop. We met in person to view the exhibition Hung Lu, Portraits of Promised Lands. Hung Lu filled her three-dimensional artwork with references to home, including what she had left behind and what she gained in coming to the United States as a young woman from China. Participants saw so many parallels between Hung Lu's experiences and their own. They received from us a pack of art supplies and created their own three-dimensional images of home, whatever that meant to them. Our project presentations and family celebration happened outside one of the schools as each participant explained what she had created. Next slide, please. In 2022, the Outwin Buchiva Portrait Competition gave us another opportunity to explore a wealth of contemporary portraiture. There were so many beautiful experiences from this workshop. I think this one might have been my favorite, but I want to share just a few of these experiences. First, the exhibition tour was filled with family. There were just dozens of people. One participant's parents had just arrived in the United States for the first reunion as a family since their daughter, now a mother with children of her own, had left Guatemala over a decade prior. At one point during the tour, I noticed that people were totally distracted, which I think was kind of distracting the rest of us. And people were chatting and grinning and taking photos off to the side. So eventually we paused the tour to go see that a large group had gathered at this portrait, which we see on the left, and the portrait that we've actually seen prior, People of the Sun, Grandma and Grandpa Santana by Vincent Valdez. They were photographing this participant's parents in front of the portrait. The resemblance between these visiting parents and the artist's grandparents portrayed in the portrait was uncanny. And this participant seemed so proud to not only be in the museum with her parents, but to have a painting on view that looked so much like them. It felt like Providence to us. The second photo here shows the participants discussing a portrait by artist Donna Castellanos, created entirely of fabric and sewing notions. It is a portrait of her grandmother who taught her to sew, and so we decided to focus on that idea of textile art and family history, which brings me to the other standout experience of this workshop. On the workshop's last evening, we gathered to work on our final products. We, the facilitators, provided fabric, and some participants brought fabric from their home countries, including these beautiful textiles that they had woven and sewn themselves. There was something magical about sitting side by side and sharing materials and stories. I think we all could have stayed for hours. The community making was as beautiful as the finished products themselves. Next slide, please. Last year's workshop highlighted the Portrait Gallery's exhibition Kinship, another exhibition of contemporary artwork, and books by the bilingual publishing company The Libros. The Libros has a series titled The Life of La Vida De. Participants received La Vida De books and then wrote and illustrated their own La Vida De autobiographies inspired by these books. They read their stories to the group and their families at the final session, and many of the participants became emotional as they acknowledged all that they had overcome and what they had accomplished in their lives. Micheline is now about to talk with us about the evaluations and outcomes from these workshops, but I want to preempt that a little bit and just share what I have noticed as a museum educator. By focusing on visual literacy skills and asking questions to foster close looking, we show that anyone can interpret art and it can be fun. We have so much fun talking about art with these participants. We perceive more than we give ourselves credit for when it comes to art, and realizing that and seeing the participants realize that is such a triumph. We see participants' confidence grow in front of the art as they go from very timid and passive museum participants to actively sharing their ideas and trusting in themselves and their skills. They see that their experiences their life experiences are not a hindrance in the galleries, but an asset, because they shed light on ways of thinking that others, myself included, had not considered. So now I'll let Micheline share a little bit more.
Thanks, Beth. Next slide, please. In this section, I will share a little bit of the findings from a couple of our workshops. Here, Becoming Dolores workshop in 2015, we were so excited to see the results of the evaluations in these two areas, advocacy and artistic talent. We were pleased, especially among the adults, that in advocacy skills, the percentage jumped from 33% to 100% after the experience. When we spoke to participants about their talents, we discovered that most of them really didn't see themselves as having any talents. The truth was that many participants had really never thought about themselves as being advocates or being artists. Next slide, please. In the La Vida De evaluation results, we were again pleased to see how meaningful the experience of telling their stories and sharing them with their children was to the participants. Passing on family histories is so critical to preserving cultural heritage and ensuring a strong sense of identity. For these participants, visiting a museum was a gift, as one mother shared with me. All participants were so committed to visiting the museum again. One of the participants had brought her mother, who was visiting from Bolivia, Felicidad. She shyly told us that she could not read or write, so her daughter helped her write her story while Felicidad made illustrations in her book. It was a very beautiful and special moment to see mother and daughter proudly holding their books at the family day. Next slide, please. I will share some of the outcomes. The impact of these workshops can be both immediate and long-term, evidenced long after the workshop ends. Some of the immediate results and outcomes we see is most of the participants shared that they would return to the museums and that they continued doing art projects with their families and telling them their stories from the past. This has been a change for us because many of the families had stopped telling the stories from childhood to their kids. So many reported that they started to listen to music from their countries, to cook traditional foods, and to talk about their cultural traditions. For many families, the experience of making art, looking at art, and visiting the museum rekindled in them the desire to pass on this cultural heritage to their kids. Some of the long-term effects that we've seen is, I will share two of my favorites. We have many. The story of Stuart, who participated back in 2013 in our workshop with his mother, Ilda. He started to volunteer for the Smithsonian on family days as a teenager, shortly after his first visit, which was with our workshop. And he continued to do so all throughout his high school. He'd take the metro, figured out how the metro worked, and off he went to volunteer on Saturdays for family days. Stuart just graduated with honors from Virginia Wesleyan University with a degree in electrical engineering. Another one that comes to mind is little Christian. I say little Christian because I still see him as a 13-year-old. He also participated in a workshop with his mom as a teenager. When I asked him what he had enjoyed the most from the workshop on the ride home from the bus, he replied, to my surprise, that what he had loved the most was going into DC and looking at buildings. He is now 20 years old and studying architecture. Like these stories, there are so many more. I wish we had time to share them. Next slide, please. A couple of more testimonials I will see and more outcomes from our work. We know that these workshops have the power to transform and shift paradigms, evidenced by these two quotes. A mother, when asked about art, responded, "I didn't know what art was. I had heard my children say something to me about art, but I really didn't understand what it was until I came to the museum. I felt relaxed and happy looking at art." I can still see her face saying that to me. Another participant who had been employed as a bus driver for many years in the district had never entered a museum, even though she had been bringing kids to the museum for all these years. And this is what she expressed. "I have been driving children to see museums for the past 15 years and never went in. I didn't think that the museum was for me. Now, after participating in this workshop, I could never walk by this museum and not go in." So it's very, very powerful how it impacts people. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I think is important to keep in mind to ensure your participants' success is to really understand who the participants are and to make sure that whatever workshop you're doing meets their needs. For example, you might think about the following, like, where are you going to hold these workshops? The location. Consider, do my Are the people that I'm serving in these workshops have transportation? Is it a walkable distance? If not, you might consider offering buses or transportation to the location. Who will your personnel? Who will do the workshop? Who will be your facilitators? It's important to really to understand, because you understand your audience, you also have to understand their culture. And so whoever is going to be facilitating must also understand the culture and preferably speak the language of the participants. Childcare. Childcare is another consideration. If the project or the workshops are not intergenerational, and children are not going to be involved in all of it, then you might consider offering childcare. If the programs are in the evening, for example, offering food is very, very important for families. Many work very hard, and having them go to a workshop in the evening, and they will be thinking about feeding their children. So if you offer food, that makes it a lot better for them. And well, celebrate. We cannot emphasize that enough. Families need desperately to feel appreciated and seen. We give out certificates. Many families have never been celebrated or received any recognition in this way. And so they tell us that they actually frame their certificates and put it in the living room. Another consideration that's really important is managing your institution's expectations. Now, we've all been there. I'm going to do a little workshop with 15 people, and you need funding, right? So it's important that funders or stakeholders know that these workshops are meant for a small number of people, 10, 15 families perhaps, and that results are sometimes seen long term. It's also important to discuss with stakeholders and to collect pre and post data through surveys, because we need that. Nothing is done nowadays without the data. And last is bringing on an art therapist. That's the consideration. It is something we didn't do, but we became really aware of this during a workshop during the pandemic. At the time of this workshop, many stories were shared that involved traumatic events. And we realized that an art therapist could have helped us better address the emotional needs of our families at that time. We recognize the ongoing need for a trained bilingual art therapist to help our participants better understand and work through their own experiences. Next slide, please. So you might be wondering, so how can I get started? I live in DC. I don't have connections to the Smithsonian, but everyone can do this. What might be my first steps, you might be wondering? Well, first you need to identify your audience. Who are you going to serve? Who will be your participants? For us, as a school system, it was easy. It was our multilingual families with children in the school system. Identify the why. What is it that you want to accomplish with your workshops? For us, again, we wanted to empower and engage multilingual families and their children by giving them an opportunity to create art and giving them access to museums. But for you, it might be something completely different. You might be working with an ESOL class of high school students, or you might be going into a community center and working with families in a community center with other partners. But it is important to decide who your audience will be. And then you need to develop a workshop content. What will it look like? Will you showcase maybe an exhibit in a gallery, or will you access our toolkit and go to the Learning Lab collections and see what other artists have done and tweak it for your own audiences? That is definitely doable. And how many hours will this take? Will this be intergenerational, or will this be just the teacher in the classroom with the ESOL students? Would you involve the parents of those students at one point? So all of these are considerations for you to think about when you're developing such a workshop. And last but not least, funding. The dreaded word, funding. money. How much does it cost? How will I pay my personnel? How will I fund the field trips? All of that is very, it's important to think about. I have to tell you that it doesn't have to be a high costly thing. It can be, you could use resources that are free. We encourage you to use sources that are free. For example, if you are at a school, you could tap into the art teacher, the librarian, an ESOL teacher, perhaps in your school. And if it's a community thing, you can tap into an artist. I know you don't have the Smithsonian perhaps at your fingertips, but there are always little galleries and artists willing, who would probably be very happy to help you. As far as sources of funding, we use Title III, which is federal funding. There are a lot of schools with high percentages of multilingual students who also receive Title I funding. So they're eligible for Title I, so that you could tap into that, or grants. You could write into grants, write grants. So this is it's a very important thing, the funding, but I would not be limited by not having a lot of money. I would go ahead and launch, take the step forward to do such programs. I can promise you that launching these workshops is possible, and it's not difficult. Now we will pass the next section to Philippa, who will lead us on a reflection. Thanks. Next slide, please.
So we've covered a lot of content today, and we have just a few minutes left. So I'd like to just highlight some of the questions to help you consider how you might incorporate some of these ideas or techniques in your own learning environments. These questions are really offered to help you think through your community's needs, your potential partners, museums, libraries, schools, community centers, faith-based organizations. And to piggyback on what Micheline was saying, some of those organizations might have funds to contribute. And so you cobble it together and you have something. Also, as we leave you, we'd like to I wish we had more time to hear what you think about this, but what ideas are you taking from today that you want to adapt for your own work? And what modifications would you implement? So we wish you all the best with that. I'll turn it over to Beth now.
Thanks, Philippa. Let's just go to the next slide. Our main question is, what questions do you have for us? We have 2 minutes to go, so let's just end up on the final slide. And if you have questions, we do have time to take just a few, but mainly, as Philippa mentioned, we would love to hear from you, either with questions or comments or ideas, or just, thoughts about how you're going to make this work in your own communities. This is our contact information. So please do reach out to us, and we're happy to respond. As Micheline and Philippa have mentioned, as you're typing out your questions, I'll just say, as Micheline and Philippa mentioned, that this really is a highlight for both of us in our professional experiences. And when we talk about these programs with people, a comment that we often get is that, oh, it seems like fun. I wish I could participate. And if you're thinking that, and I hope you are, I want to let you know that A, it is a ton of fun, and B, you can participate, just create your own. And then, as I mentioned, let us know, because we'd love to hear from you. So thank you, Micheline, thank you, Philippa, and thank you to everyone for participating in this session with us. We hope that it has inspired you to work with multilingual learners. So it looks like we've got a lot of thank yous in the chat. You're welcome. Thank you for being here. It's been such an honor to share this program with you all. So thank you all. And Philip and Micheline, any final comments in our last 25 seconds?
Yes, I'm very grateful to be here, and thank you all for joining us. I want to reiterate what Beth said. I encourage you to do these programs. They are so worth it and so fun.
And we'd love to hear about it if you do. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.